morning, good afternoon, and good evening, hockey fans. It is a very comfortable indeed, 14 degrees Celsius, 57 degrees Fahrenheit, in a very sunny and beautiful Bridgewater, Nova Scotia today. My name is Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to the Monday, April 25th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. Now, we had 3 elimination games last night. We had 3 games that ended up in eliminations. We had 3 series come to a close last night. A very exciting night of hockey, especially as the night wore on. We're going to start in Philadelphia. The Washington Capitals in Philly to take on the Flyers. Game 6 of their series. Washington coming in, leading that series 3-2, and they leave as a series champion. Washington wins the game 1-0. A very low-scoring, very tight game. Washington wins it. They're moving on. Philadelphia is done, but a great comeback there for the Flyers, making that change to Michael Neuwirth in net. And Neuwirth played a very good game here one more time. The offense just could not find anything on Braden Holtby. Shots in this game were 29-26. In favor of the Capitals, so this was definitely a close game. The first 2 minutes of this game, very, very physical. 6 hits, 3 on each side, so really no edge going either way. Philadelphia was doing a very good job early in this one of blocking Washington's shot attempts, but Michael Neuwirth still had to come up with a big save on a Mike Richards wraparound attempt. Colin McDonald laying the body, a huge hit on Andrei Burakovsky in the Philadelphia corner, but still, no real physical edge to this game, even as the first period weighs on. Philadelphia starts to push middle of the first period, playing physical. They get 3 shots on goal. Giroux kind of kills that momentum with a hooking penalty on TJ Oshie. No damage on that power play. Philadelphia, though, they get a little lazy with their sticks here late in the first period. It leads to a Washington 5-on-3 power play. We know how good Washington's power play has been in this series. Michael Neuwirth coming up with a huge save on Justin Williams. He had a clear attempt from the slot. Neuwirth comes up big. More rough stuff here to open up the second period. Nicholas Backstrom unfortunately taking a double minor. Matt Niskanen about 10 seconds later taking a hooking penalty. So that sends the Flyers this time into a 5-on-3 power play. No damage really happening there. White now takes a holding the stick penalty on Matt Niskanen. This is a couple of minutes later, and just as that penalty expires, penalty trouble leading to goals. 8:59 into the second period. Washington scores the game's only goal. It's Nicholas Backstrom with his second of the playoffs. Johansson and Ovechkin picking up the assists. It was a nice one-timer from Johansson to Backstrom. Little, like, kind of a tic-tac-toe play, actually. And Ovechkin, that celebration it's another reminder that I don't think anyone that has ever played the game of hockey has enjoyed scoring goals and seeing his team scoring goals quite as much as Alexander Ovechkin, because that, like, Wayne Gretzky style, like, spastic running celebration that he did after Backstrom buried that goal, it was beautiful. Ovechkin to me is just like, he's just a big kid. So that's the kind of guy that you kind of like to get behind. It is 1-0 Washington. The team start trading chances after the goal. Michael Neuwirth making a big save on Daniel Winnick, who has, I think, played rather well in this series. And Holtby with his first, like, real huge save of this game, coming up big on the shot from McDonald. Hit parade continues in the late second period. 7 hits delivered in the span of just 65 seconds. 5 of those 7 hits going for Washington, so they're starting to play a little bit more of a physical game here as well. Michael Neuwirth forced to make another big save, this time on Jay Beagle. Sam Gagner takes a hooking penalty on Evgeny Kuznetsov at the very beginning of the third period, about, I think it was like a minute 5 in or something like that. The Capitals with 4 shot attempts on that power play. 3 of those 4 missed the net, so maybe some nerves coming into play for the Capitals. One thing that I noticed about this game is Washington gave no room for Philadelphia's star players, especially in the third period. They were all over those top 3 guys. So the top 3 we're talking about Voracek, Giroux, and Wayne Simmons, I would say. There were 0 shot attempts for those 3 players until 7 minutes and 23 seconds into the third period. But mid to late third, here comes Philadelphia. Here comes the push. 0 Washington shot attempts from 11:25 to 18:49 of the third period. That's how big this Flyers push was. The Caps are way back on their heels trying to defend that 1-goal lead. In that same span for the Flyers, they put 14 shot attempts on net, 7 of them getting through to Holtby, 5 of them were blocked, 2 of them missed the net, but 14 shot attempts in a span of just over 7 minutes. So the Flyers really pushing here, desperate to tie this thing and extend this series. Braden Holtby stones Pierre-Edouard Bellemare point blank, and again on the Ghost Bear, Shane Gostisbehere from the point, a nice little one-timer from Gostisbehere. Holtby equal to the task on that one as well. And in the dying seconds, the last 10 seconds of the third period, it's Carl Alsner who comes up with a big block on a Wayne Simmons shot. That iced the series. These two teams combine in this game 55 shots, 70 hits, Philadelphia out-hitting Washington 38-32, and the teams went a combined 0 for 8 on the power play. That was the story. Special teams coming up big, the penalty kills on both sides, but the story really was, the goaltending, especially with Michael Neuwirth really keeping the team in it, and Washington's ability to just hold on. They really held on for the last half of that third period. They locked it down, 1-0 Washington. The Capitals win the series 4-2. They are moving on for a date with Sidney Crosby's Penguins. Now, if you're not a fan of this series and you're a fan of hockey, I think you're lying about one of those two things. Let's go to Minnesota now, where the Wild were hosting the Dallas Stars, Game 6 of that series. Dallas went into that game leading the series 3-2. They leave that game as a series champion, winning the game 5-4, and this was probably the more exciting of the first 2 games that were played yesterday. Dallas, obviously a lot of offense there from both teams. Shots were 29-24 in favor of the hometown Wild. Rather touching tribute to Prince at the beginning of the Minnesota game. Obviously Prince from Minneapolis, and so much of what is Prince is tied up in that city and in that state. So, a very touching tribute to Prince to begin the game. The Stars get caught early in this one with too many men on the ice. Absolutely nothing generated on that power play from the Wild. And there were just certain things here where, like, early in this game, a lot of people say, oh, well, you can't lose a game early. There were a couple of instances here where, like, Minnesota had opportunities to do things and really didn't do anything with them, which really ended up kind of being the story of the game at the end. Minnesota then gives up a 5-on-3 power play opportunity, taking a couple of bad penalties. The Stars go to work. 5:56 into the first period. Dallas gets on the board on the power play. It's John Klingberg with his first of these playoffs. I kind of called Klingberg out, I think, a couple of videos ago, like he needs to start doing something. Klingberg with his first of these playoffs, Spezza and Ben with the assists, a nice little cycle from the Stars. They put it to the dot, and a nice slapper from Klingberg puts them on the board 1-0. Dallas avoiding letting up the momentum this time. We know how resilient the Wild have been in this series and how they are just as a team in general. 9 minutes and 7 seconds into the first, Dallas doubles the lead. It's Spezza, his 4th goal of the playoffs, and this guy's a dark horse for Conn Smythe right now. Spezza had himself a hell of a game tonight, and he's really performing. I think he's up to 9 points now or something like that. Spezza with the goal. Janmark and Eves with the assists, with Spezza getting the rebound off the Janmark shot and tucking the backhander in behind Devan Dubnyk. It is 2-0 Dallas. Wild respond to that 2-0 goal by amping up the physical game. They record 6 straight hits after that 2-0 goal. Just 3 shot attempts off of those 6 hits, but at least they're showing some fight, some will to come back in this game. Koivu beating Eakin on a face-off. Mikko Koivu winning a face-off against Eakin, but Dallas gets possession of the puck. And 18-11 into the first period, Dallas has now tripled their lead. It's 3-0. Patrick Sharp with his 3rd of these playoffs. Eakin and Ben drawing the assists. A nice little lead pass from Eakin into Sharp on the 2-on-1. Sharp keeps a wrister. It beats Dubnyk. And Dallas up 3-0. This thing's starting to get away from Minnesota. Dallas, once again, they hold on to their momentum. They keep momentum into the second period, recording the period's first 7 shot attempts. And Vernon Fiddler, unfortunately, got a little too momentum-y, I guess. Takes a tripping penalty against Michael Granlund. But on the Wild power play, they generate 0 shots. Let me say that again. The Wild are on the power play, and they record 0 shots on a 2-minute power play. That was another one of these instances where Minnesota had chances and didn't generate anything. And both of them so far have come on the power play. They get on the power play and they just can't barely generate a shot on the power play. And that's, again, one of these things that I think in this game come back to bite them. Minnesota's best chance in the second period, Nino Niederreiter sprung in on a partial breakaway. Kari Lehtinen, a nice pad save. He was equal to the task on that one. Most of the second period, pretty back and forth. There aren't many great chances until late. Dallas with a late push, a late rush here in the second period. 19:36. Final minute of the second period, Dallas scores what at the time really looked like the backbreaker. Dallas goes up 4-0. It's Jamie Benn with his 4th of these playoffs. Sharp and Spezza drawing the assists. In transition, a nice little lead pass from Spezza to Sharp. Sharp dropping it for Jamie Benn. Wrister. It's in the net. It's 4-0 Dallas, and a lot of people, there were a number of fans that actually left the building in the second intermission. That got reported by somebody on Twitter that there were quite a number of empty seats after the second period. But the third period, it's an all-out blitz for the Wild. They've got nothing to lose. They know it. An all-out blitz here. Antoine Roussel takes himself a holding penalty, puts Minnesota on the power play. 3:48 into the third, Minnesota's on the board. It's Jared Spurgeon, who had himself a game, his first of these playoffs. Granlund and Koivu picking up the assists. A good cycle by the Wild. They get the puck in down low. They crash the net. Jared Spurgeon hacks it in, gets it behind Lehtinen. It is now 4-1. And those in attendance barely had the time to sit down. 4 minutes and 4 seconds into the third. So we're talking 16 seconds. After that goal, Minnesota scores again. It's Jonas Brodin with his first of these playoffs. Haula and Niederreiter drawing the assists. A nice little cross-ice pass, and the backhander from Brodin finds pay dirt. It is now 4-2. We got ourselves a hockey game here, folks. The Wild, again, their captain resiliency in this series, they are back in it. Dallas is back on their heels. They're doing a pretty good job blocking shots, but Johns takes a high sticking penalty, puts Minnesota back on the power play, and they waste no time. 8:39 into the third. It is now a 1-goal game. Minnesota on the power play. Jared Spurgeon with his second of the game, second of the playoffs. Koivu and Suter picking up the assists. A nice little backhand pass from Koivu. It gets into the slot. A beautiful slapper here from Spurgeon. Actually, Koivu drew a number of players down to him, just holding the puck. Drew a couple of players down into him. One little move, backhander, puts it right on the tape for Spurgeon, and it's in the net. A great, great play, a nice set play from the Wild. This is a 1-goal game, folks. We are not done by a long shot. Minnesota's still pressing here. They still got pressure, but 10:23 into the third period, they get bit by a really wonky, almost a 1 in a million goal here. 10:23 into the third period, Dallas restoring a 2-goal lead. It's Goligoski with his second of the playoffs. Janmark and Spezza picking up the assists on that one. A wrist shot from the point, but that was really not the story here. The wrist shot comes in from the point. Dubnyk absolutely loses sight of the puck. I think it pops up in the air. It actually winds up in the crease in his feet, and as he goes down to cover it up, he knocks the puck into his own net. What a heartbreaker for Devan Dubnyk, who has played rather well, especially late in this series. Didn't have himself much of a game tonight, unfortunately, or last night, rather. But Dallas now up 5-3. The Wild, again, go back to getting the better of the physical game here. Way more chances, more opportunities. 15-13 into the third. It's a 1-goal game once again. It's Jason Pominville, his 4th goal of these playoffs for Minnesota. Brodin and Niederreiter drawing the assists. Pominville gets the rebound off the Brodin shot. He puts it in. Huge celebration. The building is going nuts. nuts. There are people saying, I've never heard this building this loud. Minnesota is back in this. The last 4 minutes of this game, an absolute frenzy. There are blocked shots everywhere. We head into the final minute. Minnesota cycling the puck. It's deflected to the front. Niederreiter with a great chance and comes within literal millimeters of tying this game. Kari Lettinen's pad is almost just tantalizingly so close to being too far over the line to make this save. The puck does not fully cross the goal line. Lettinen forced to make one more big save on Mikko Koivu in the dying seconds of this game. That seals the win. Dallas wins the game 5-4. They win the series 4-2. Big ups to the Minnesota Wild, man. They played an excellent series. Dallas, again, questionable roster choices, but they hold on to win this one. But the Wild definitely made this thing a series. No power shortage in this one, obviously. 53 shots on goal, 9 total goals, 3 of them coming on the power play. This was everything that you wanted in a hockey game. Dallas wins it. Dallas moving on to face the winner of tonight's Game 7, which we will tee up in a little bit, between Chicago and St. Louis. Our final game of the evening saw Game 6 go down between the Florida Panthers and the New York Islanders in Brooklyn, New York. Again, Game 6 of the series. The Islanders coming into this one leading the series 3-2, and they leave it with their first series win in 23 years. Last night was a hell of a night for the sport of hockey, I'll tell you that much. The Islanders win this game 2-1, very close game. Another game that needs more than 60 minutes to decide it between these two teams. I can't recall many series that really have been as close, I guess, as this one and needed so many overtimes and multiple overtime games. Shots in this one were 51-42 for the Islanders. So no matter what the score, this could have had the same score as the Dallas-Minnesota game, and I still would have said, the goaltenders played pretty well. 51-42 the shots for the Islanders. The Isles come out on home ice here, and they are pretty much getting the better of the early play here. Florida, to their credit, blocking 7 shots in the first 6 minutes of this game. They're playing with desperation. They're doing what they need to do. They're playing like the team that is behind in the series. The nerves are also still apparent, even as far into the game as the middle of the first period. A lot of shot attempts missing the net, and some of them missing the net by a wide margin. So there are probably still some nerves that are coming into this, even though these teams have played so much and they know each other so well. Definitely still nerves on the ice. Luongo and Greiss are both tested here early in this one, making individual stops, very good stops, on Kyle Okposo and Vincent Trocheck, a guy that I called out yesterday, saying he's a guy that needs to step up and play well. Trocheck had a very good game for Florida, I thought. Unfortunately, obviously, was in a losing effort, but I thought Trocheck had a very good game, had a great chance here on Greiss, who was equal to the task. The Islanders playing slightly more physical in this one. Yager, unfortunately, taking a hooking penalty on Kyle Okposo. No damage on the Islanders' power play. And based off of that, Florida is the first team to get on the board. 18:58 into the first period, almost into the last minute. Florida scores. It's Huberdeau getting his first goal of these playoffs, which is a bit of a surprise. Jokinen and Trocheck picking up the assists on that Huberdeau goal. A deflected wrister. Huberdeau actually falling. It was almost like a fadeaway in basketball. He's falling as he takes the shot. It deflects off one of the Islanders' defenders, and it beats Thomas Greiss by changing direction. Florida will certainly take that bounce in a series this close. They're up 1-0. They get the early momentum swing. The Islanders, to their credit, are continuing to generate the vast majority of the chances in this game, and that continues into the second period, but Florida gets their best chance to double their lead, extend the lead at 8 minutes and 58 seconds of the second. It's a broken play. Greiss has to make a big save on Jussi Jokinen. Jokinen thought there should have been a penalty on the play. His stick was knocked out of his hands and broken in the process. I probably would have called a slashing penalty there because I think it probably would have been warranted. No call on the ice, Greiss with the big save, and no call on the ice, that phrase, that's going to come into play here in a little bit. A major push, though, gets generated off of that chance for the Panthers. They get the next 7 attempts on net until Nikolai Kulemin takes himself a penalty. Really not a great power play from the Panthers, and that actually gives the Islanders a spark. The physicality picks up here. They kill that penalty off relatively easily, I thought. Although Thomas Greiss does have to come up big one more time. He makes a diving poke check save on Dmitry Kulikov, I believe it was. Kulikov essentially had a wide open net, and Jágr was right there too. Greiss was going in the wrong direction. He changes direction, comes back, dives for the poke check save. It was that close to being 2-0. The Islanders generate another late push here in the second period. That gets killed by a Kyle Okposo tripping penalty, but Florida immediately gives it back via an interference call against Jiri Hudler. We head into the third period, and surprise, surprise, Thomas Greiss has to make another big save. In the early third, it's Riley Smith, who has been an absolute dagger for Florida in this series. He's been so good. Smith with a nice little turnaround play. He gets the puck on his wrong end, basically sweeps the puck the whole way around, throws the slapper on net. It was a good shot. Greiss equal to the task, making a big save. Florida's pushing here. Lots of attempts towards the goal. The Islanders starting to play back on their heels a little bit. Both of these teams get into some penalty trouble middle of the third period. They survive them. They kill those penalties off. And here's your pivotal moment of the regulation time in this game. It's a bad no call. I'm just, you all know what play I'm talking about. Trocheck gets tripped in the offensive zone. It didn't get called. It should have been called. I understand that it's so late in the game. You want to put your whistles away. You want to let him play. But he was tripped. Not only was he tripped, but then the Islanders turn the puck around in transition, and 19:06 into the third period, last minute of play in the third period, the Islanders tie the game. It's John Tavares from Kulemin and Leddy. Tavares' fourth of these playoffs. A nice rush by the Islanders. Tavares gets the rebound off the Kulemin shot. The puck is laying there in the crease. Tavares is just Johnny on the spot. He's the guy that's right there, gets the puck, scores the goal in the last minute. The Islanders have tied it. The Barclays Center is going crazy, but it should have been a tripping penalty. I'm sorry to say this to Islanders fans, but you guys, especially if you were there, that's a tripping penalty. 99 times out of 100, that's a tripping penalty. Especially when the penalty should be enforced in favor of the team that is, they might be winning this game by a single goal, but they're losing the series. So I know that probably shouldn't come into play. You know what? I should correct myself there. That probably shouldn't come into play, but I mean, I'm sorry. That's a tripping penalty. So we're going into overtime here. The Islanders mostly controlling the flow of the play in overtime. Shots in the first overtime period were 15-8 in favor of the Islanders, so they almost double them up. But the attempts are actually closer to 27-17 in terms of the missed shots and the blocked shots and the shots that actually get through to the goaltenders. So the Islanders really did have control of that overtime period. The Panthers kind of rectify that going into the second overtime. Oh yeah, by the way, this game went to double overtime. Of course it did. It's the Islanders and Panthers. They kind of rectify that in the second overtime period. In the first 6 minutes and 30 seconds of the second overtime period, the Panthers put 9 shot attempts towards Thomas Greiss. But it's that age-old statement of it's not necessarily the quantity of chances that you have, it's the quality of the chances that you have. And the quality chance went to the Islanders. 10:41 into the second overtime period. The legend of John Tavares is cemented in Islanders lore forevermore. Tavares, his second goal of the game, his fifth of these playoffs. Okposo and the rookie Quine picking up the assists. It's a wraparound rebound, a rebound off of a wrist shot. Off of Tavares' own wrist shot. It's his own rebound. He wraps the puck in behind Luongo, loses sight of it, or is just fatigued, or just can't get back in enough time. Tavares tucks the puck home. It's bedlam in Barclays, and that is it. The Islanders win the game. They win the series. Luongo honestly played his best game of this series. 49 saves in a losing effort, and that is heartbreaking for any athlete. He played so well. It was, just to watch it, it was his best game. And unfortunately, the team in front of him couldn't generate enough offense on a great goaltender on the other side. If every series could be like Florida and the Islanders, oh man, just awesome. But again, I feel so bad for the Panthers because again, I hate to keep harping on it. That, to me, that's a penalty all day. The Islanders beat the Panthers 4-2 in this series. They have a second-round date with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that is going to be a hell of a hard series because for everything that the Panthers are, I would argue that the Lightning are all that and quite a bit better. In any case, it's going to be a difficult second-round date for the Islanders. That'll be a really interesting series, actually, to talk about once the time comes. Islanders win 2-1 in double overtime, win the series 4-2. Okay, guys, let's tee up the 2 games that we've got on tap for tonight. Anaheim is in Nashville visiting the Predators, leading their series 3-2. It's Game 6. Begins tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on Sportsnet in Canada, as well as CNBC and Fox Sports in the United States. Anderson and Rinne, that's going to be your goaltending matchup. And my first question to you, which one of these goaltenders do you think is going to step up and steal this series? Anderson could close the book on it tonight, or Rinne could push this thing back to Anaheim for Game 7. One of those 2 goaltenders, I got a feeling, I got that tingly feeling that we're going to get such a great goaltending matchup tonight, and one especially is going to just grab this series by the scruff of its neck, and they are going to be the ones to decide it. One thing that I found really interesting about Game 5 in this series, Philip Forsberg getting himself penalty killing time for the Predators. I have to wonder if that's got anything to do with the absence/injury with Craig Smith. But I mean, Philip Forsberg, he's a great player, 64 points in the regular season. He's a great player, but he was just a +1. So he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy, like he strikes me as a skill forward. He doesn't strike me as a Ryan Kessler type of guy that is a skill forward who you also put out on the penalty kill because he's a great defensive forward as well. Forsberg doesn't strike me as a great defensive forward. I found it interesting that he had multiple minutes, I believe, of penalty killing time in Game 5. Gotta wonder if that stays that way going forward with the Predators facing elimination. The Preds gave the Ducks 7 power play opportunities, speaking of power plays, in Game 5. That cannot happen again. No mas. No mas for Nashville, giving Anaheim anywhere near that many power play opportunities. Because if you do that, this series is done because Anaheim's going to start connecting on them. They're an elite special teams unit. Like, you can't give them that many opportunities and expect your goaltender to keep bailing you out. Rinne's capable, but you can't expect him to keep doing it. So that's got to be better for Nashville to have any chance on home ice tonight. And the secondary scoring for Anaheim, one thing that I noticed from Game 5, they started getting that secondary scoring, and the secondary scoring became vital in that game. Silfverberg, David Perron, Sami Vatanen, they each had multi-point games in Game 5. That bodes very well for Anaheim if they move forward. If they win tonight, move forward in the playoffs, that secondary scoring becomes vital to any kind of continued success in the playoffs. As much as the greedy part of me wants to say that this series is going to go to 7 games, I believe my original prediction, I'm going to scroll down here and take a peek one more time, my original prediction was Ducks in 6, so I'm even more greedy about getting my original predictions right smack dab on the money. So I'm going to take Anaheim here. This is a coin flip for me because Anaheim won the first home game of the series in the last game. So the writer in me says that Nashville should win on their home ice as well. But I think Anaheim ultimately, they're just the better team here. So I like the Ducks tonight. I like the Ducks to close out the series. Give me another perfect prediction. I like Anaheim tonight. It's going to be a low-scoring game, goaltenders duel. I like 2-1 Anaheim, and Ducks win the series in 6. And now here's the big one. Blackhawks and Blues in St. Louis. It's Game 7. Series tied 3-3. The game begins at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Available on CBC in Canada as well as NBCSN in the United States. Crawford and Elliott going to be your goaltending matchup here. And Brian Elliott, first thing, he's going to look to rebound from what was easily his worst game in Game 6. 5 goals against on 35 shots. Not Brian Elliott-like from these playoffs because he has arguably been So certainly has been one of the best goaltenders in these playoffs with all the shots that he's faced. But 5 goals against in Game 6, that's not good enough. He's going to look to rebound from, again, what I said was easily his worst game of the playoffs. Vladimir Tarasenko scored again for St. Louis in Game 6, but I have to note, and this was what caused him to have a bit of a war of words here with Ken Hitchcock. Hitchcock saying something very interesting actually in his post-game presser where he's talking about like everybody gets so worked up about time on ice. Time on ice is not about time on ice. It's about shifts, blah, 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 blah. And I can see his point. But Vladimir Tarasenko, your best player, your best scorer, your most dangerous sniper, saw just 8 seconds of power play time. So, I mean, clearly you had power play opportunities, but your best player only saw 8 seconds of power play time. So that to me is confusing, and I can understand why Tarasenko was upset with something like that. Tarasenko is kind of having that Steven Stamkos issue where his coach has a different idea of his ice time and things like that than he does. So that's kind of interesting there. I'm going to want to see where they're deploying Tarasenko, where they're on home ice and they have the benefit of the last change and everything like that. That'll be interesting to kind of see for me. An unlikely X factor here for the Chicago Blackhawks, Richard Panik. Remember that guy? Richard Panik. I think I might have even talked about him yesterday, but really an unlikely X factor. In Game 6, he had an assist. He had 4 shots on goal. He threw 6 hits. He saw 1:13 of power play time. So Richard Panik, a guy that is, a bottom 6 forward easily on this Chicago team, is kind of playing the role of X Factor. He's kind of being that jack-of-all-trades guy where you put him wherever you need him, and he's delivering. So big ups to Richard Panik. Had himself a hell of a Game 6. My question, have the Blues already been psychologically beaten? And I guess the secondary question to that, do you think they're actually okay with losing? And let me tell you where that comes from. It comes from 2 places. Number 1, I actually had a conversation in my workplace yesterday with a gentleman who came in wearing a Blackhawks hat. And I just happened to randomly just say, how do you like the Hawks' chances in 7? And this guy turned around to me and, without missing a beat, he said, the game's already over. And I said, I was surprised, but we started having a conversation and we were kind of talking about like, look, the Blues are possibly psychologically already beaten because they had this series, in their back pocket. They really did. And they had the defending Stanley Cup champions down 3-1, and now all of a sudden they blink and it's 3-3. And they had a great chance in overtime in a game and couldn't get it done. And then they came back out for the next game and lost 6-3. So the idea and the possibility is that the Blues psychologically have already lost this game because it's like, this is going to show the pro wrestling nerd in me, it's like facing The Undertaker at WrestleMania, unless you're Brock Lesnar. But you get there and you get on that big stage and you see all these people and all the kind of importance and significance, and then you see who you're against and you know everything about this person and you've watched them for years do it over and over again, success after success after success. And psychologically you start thinking, geez, maybe this is like, is this too big for me? I can't beat this. And that's the worry with St. Louis, that they may not have the mental fortitude or the experience, quite frankly, to get it done in this kind of environment, even though they are at home. And what I ask about, like, maybe they're okay with losing, I think about the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2013. I think it was 2013. I'm pretty sure it was. They have that playoff series with Boston. They're up 3-1. It goes to a Game 7. They're up 4-1 in that game, and they end up losing the game in overtime because, maybe in part, you think about the fan base, and the fan base is like, oh man, well, I mean, we got this far. We got here. Nobody thought we would get here. So no matter what happens, we'll be happy. And I mean, I guess I don't really think that that's true with St. Louis, because they've gotten to this point before and Chicago has done it to them so many times that they're just like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's not the same situation, but the slight risk of it at the very least is there. But I think St. Louis is actually so desperate to beat Chicago and prove that they can do it that I'm sure that doesn't come into play. In any case, tonight, Game 7, Chicago in St. Louis taking on the Blues. How do you bet against the Blackhawks? How do you do it? Like, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't know how you can. It's Game 7. They've won the Cup 3 times. They're a dynasty. I have to. I got to go with Chicago. I got to do it. In my heart of hearts, I feel like Chicago's going to do it one more time. So I like Chicago 3-2 to beat St. Louis in St. Louis. Let's get super greedy and take it to overtime. Chicago wins 3-2 to win the series in 7 games. All right, folks, that is it for the Monday, April 25th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. Who do you think wins the games tonight? Does Nashville extend their series to 7? Does St. Louis finally get off the schneid to beat Chicago and prove that they can do it? Do your picks totally go against mine? If they do, awesome, fantastic. Let me know. That's it for me, Justin. Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. We got 2 great games tonight. Could see 2 more eliminations, the final 2 eliminations of the first round. The second round is looming, and I can't wait to talk about it. See you tomorrow.